Good evening and welcome to the Select Board meeting for Monday, September 11th. Would you please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, open forum. Who is here for open forum? Yes? Do you want to come up to the table and just, we know who you are, but all those viewers at home might not, so.
I'm just here to follow up on the items that we discussed a couple weeks ago.
Yep.
A couple of meetings ago. So I think that was the 17th of July when we met. There were 6 possible mitigations to that issue we were discussing. And I just want to know where we are with those, because I haven't heard anything from anyone.
Sure.
About any of them. So let's.
I can put John on the spot unless Charlie, if you.
Put both of us.
All right, I'm gonna put.
It's a
our
big spot.
DPW head and our town administrator.
Sure.
Well, I guess
Answer.
one
Do
item.
you have specific questions first?
do.
Okay, go ahead.
So the first one on the list was reducing the speed limit to 25 miles an hour. You made a motion, David. And I noticed that the signs, nothing's changed on the street about that. So that's the status of that. It's not.
It was approved by the board. However, John needs to find funds to get the signage and such. In fact, I believe we have a
Okay.
article at town meeting.
Okay. The next one was flashing signs, some kind of better signage on both sides of the curb and the road. I thought there was talk about a blinking sign or something like that on both
Okay,
sides.
and I see John nodding his head yes.
Yes, but that's not done.
Similar situation, we've requested estimates to have those 2 signs made. They do cost approximately $1,500 per sign. So
Okay.
again, part of the article that we've submitted,
Okay,
the town meeting would be to have those, would include the funding for those.
Is it for the special, John? Is that, okay, yeah, because that's coming up.
That's October 2nd.
yep.
Yep. Another one was to cut down or remove vegetation that might have been obscuring the curve around the road. I haven't noticed that anything's been cut down or if there's really anything obstructing that view.
Right.
But I haven't noticed that anything's.
Okay.
with that.
Is that still on the to-do list?
Yes, that, we still want to need a little bit more determination about the property line.
Property line?
Okay,
Okay. So the police chief was here at that meeting on the 17th.
he's at this meeting too.
Yeah, one of the things you said that you could do was to speed up enforcement, step up enforcement to see exactly how fast traffic was going down that street.
Which I have been, so I've been getting some reports back from the officers.
So what happens, will you prepare a report for these guys and tell them what's going on, or how's that work?
I mean, I can communicate with them, but I mean, we're just trying to get a determination of the speed on the street, but
Right.
traffic enforcement would definitely help just about on any street in town, but
Yeah.
definitely in that area, and they've been, when I do have time, I have been, when the manpower allows it, I've been putting enforcement up in that area, Bridge Street and some other areas that we have.
Okay, great. Peter, you said you were going to talk to other towns, other organizations who may have had similar problems and how they addressed it.
Yep, we have a meeting with OCPC. Colony Planning is the group that we use for consulting with situations like this, when we're looking for ideas and things that maybe we don't have to recreate the wheel for.
Right.
So they break for July and August. Their first meeting will be, I believe they've told it was the 19th of this month.
That's next week.
Yes, so I've got it on my agenda to discuss as soon as they get back into the meetings.
Great, thank you. And the other last thing I had was identifying where the right-of-way is on that street. And there was something,
In fact,
discussion about
in fact,
engineering.
you in fact filed with the Board of Health a septic plan from, in about 1999 that showed the boundary of your property. So that you can use that plan to determine where you're going to be able to do any work on your property versus the right-of-way.
Okay. Great.
Is that helpful?
I don't know. Oh, yeah, the update.
Government moves slowly, as we,
Yeah,
as we all
okay.
know, but.
That's fine.
I think
appreciate
if we
it.
can get that funding at town meeting, then we'll be able to get those signs in and We haven't forgotten you.
Okay, that's what I
But
wanted to
it's
hear.
always, no, but it's always good to come and follow up and make sure, so.
Right, great.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you.
Bye.
Anybody else for open forum? All right, seeing nobody, I will close open forum, and our appointments for tonight are canceled, so we will move to action items. Mr. Spagone.
Yes, first on action items is it approval for a plaque for Mr. Bob McCarthy, plaque to be placed on the town common.
Okay, and I see several members of Kiwanis here to discuss the plaque. If you want to come up and sit at the table, I don't know if you have designated who wants to talk or explain, but
Let me guess who's coming up.
I could have predicted that one, too.
Okay.
Hello. Would you please tell us who you are and why you're here?
Thank you. I first of all want to say hello to the Select Board of East Bridgewater for the first time ever.
You've never been here before?
I've never been.
Shame on you.
Not before the select board.
That's right.
That's the Board of Selectmen.
He's being so fresh. Diane Warkle and Chuck Horan, East Bridgewater Kiwanis Club, and behind me, Pat Trombley and Ken
In
England.
English.
Jeez, I'm sorry. Okay, so we are here because sometime back, the Board of Selectmen approved the memorial of the gazebo in honor of Bob McCarthy of East Bridgewater. And the Kiwanis said we would like to be involved in that. He was a Kiwanian for 50 years, a lifelong member of East Bridgewater. I grew up with him and have known him forever. So that's what we did. You have approved the gazebo to be put in his name, and we have presented a proof that's very close to what we would like to do, and that the measurement there should be exact.
Okay.
There is, I think they misspelled a word on the top line, but that's been corrected. Basically, we listed all of his achievements and positions that he has held for this town and the state. And then the bottom was just a little memorial from the East Bridgewater Kiwanis. So we would love to have that approved. Bridgewater Trophy will be doing the plaque. What is it going to be? Black what? What's the material?
It's an aluminum with raised lettering. It's a very attractive plaque. We've seen some other examples they've done for other towns, so it's a pretty attractive plaque. So we're comfortable with that, and I trust you will as well.
Okay.
We,
Questions?
Upon approval, when do you plan on having the ceremony to dedicate that?
well, we had hoped to tie it in with something for the bicentennial, but I don't know what's left. And I think we need a lead of about 4 weeks. John's been wonderful. We've had numerous proofs. Are you surprised that I went back and forth about 5 times? But he says about 4.
We have a trolley's tours are scheduled for October 14th,
Okay,
starting at 9 o'clock. We could do it before that, if that would give you enough time.
October 14, and the day of the week is what?
Saturday.
A Saturday. Okay.
I think the first trolley tour goes off at 9, so we could do a dedication at 8:30.
And then okay. And we can talk further. I know you said perhaps we could have a small reception at the town hall, a list of dignitaries. I think we'll probably have to talk to the town about that and being a mutual undertaking. One of the things that the McCarthy family had requested were any donations that would like to be made, and Bob, there were a couple of suggestions. One was the Kiwanis. So we feel it's very appropriate to have those funds that did come into our treasury to go to this plaque. And then I think we're probably going to have to, maybe,
We may have to raise a few more funds internally.
might
but
have to a
that's
little bit
Kiwanis
more,
issue.
yeah.
We'll deal with that.
the family has seen it. They sent back their input on a little different wording on the bottom, and I changed it, and they're happy. They're very happy with it.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's great.
Questions?
No, I think it's wonderful. Obviously, we all knew Mr. McCarthy in some way, shape, or form. and there's so much you can say about them. Me and John Haynes did talk about this a little bit. Maybe Veterans Day might be one of the
Oh, yeah, what
days
about
as
the
well.
parade?
Yeah, that we could tie this memorial into, get more people down there, and obviously being
Yeah.
a veteran himself might be.
November, yeah.
Yeah, November. Yeah,
Give
we
us a
looked it
little
up.
more
November
time.
11th,
And
I
that's
think,
a
is this year.
Saturday.
Yeah,
that's a
and the
Saturday.
parade is here in East Bridgewater.
Yeah, we
so
have the
that-
parade
That
here as
might
well.
be,
That
That might
might, gives
work
you a little
this
more
time.
time,
That's a great
a
idea.
greater
Yeah,
audience,
yeah.
maybe.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So,
I'll give John a call tomorrow at Bridgewater Trophy. We did walk around the gazebo, and we do have a spot that we think, for a lot of different reasons, would be very appropriate for that. At some point, I'd like you to see where that is
Mhm.
and see how you feel about that.
Okay, and John, do you want to be involved in that process? So just include John Haynes in anything
Sure.
that we're doing
Yeah,
with that.
we were gonna ask for DPW assistance with setting the plaque onto the
Right.
gazebo.
Okay.
I don't think it's gonna be that difficult, but we'd rather have it done professionally.
Yep, great. Okay. I think it's great. Bob was a very proud Kiwanian. He was a member of this board for a number of years, as well as his other achievements, so I think this is a very fitting tribute for him.
I think it will
Absolutely.
be
Bob was
wonderful.
one of the first people to ask me if I wanted to get involved with the town.
And you
And
still
I
want to
didn't
be,
say
and you
no.
still want to do this? You're not mad?
I'll do my personal on it.
Always look out when somebody says, sign
Thanks,
here.
Bob.
Yeah.
I know.
All
He
right,
was,
yeah, great.
he was a great guy.
Okay.
with The whole family.
yeah, for sure. If there aren't any other questions from the board, I'll
No.
take a motion.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to, the plaque for Mr. McCarthy be done and placed on the town common for a date to be announced.
Second.
All right, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you for
Thank
all
you
the
so
work you
much.
put into it, folks.
Yeah, and I
Thank
think
you.
that Veterans Day is,
What we
think that's
found
a
out
great
is the-
idea.
The Kiwanis organization works the slowest town government.
almost, maybe slower.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay, moving on. The convicular license for South Shore Nutrition, Kerry McPherson, manager, 649 Oak Street.
That's me.
That's you, come on up.
Hi. How are you guys?
hey, thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Do you want to just tell us a little bit about what it is that you're doing?
Yeah, it's a nutrition club. We serve protein shakes and energizing teas, all healthy, low calorie. It will be a good addition to the gym. I think they had something there before that didn't work out, and I have a couple other locations, so I'm confident that it will do fine. We do a lot of fundraising, so it was nice to hear about the Kiwani. So what we would try to help is use our club as a platform to kind of help the town and raising funds and things like that. So
Okay.
I think it would be a good addition.
Great.
Yeah.
Questions?
It's a great
Simple.
idea.
No, yeah, absolutely. And this would be at, what, is it Gold's?
It's at Gold's, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Club X now.
Club X, sorry.
Yeah.
I always call it, 'cause
It's nice.
Show my
It's
age.
all-
I know,
yeah,
right?
Right? Same.
I didn't say Ritter, could've went way back.
All right, well, if there's no questions, I'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the convicular license for South Shore Nutrition, 649 Oak Street,
Second.
location.
Motion is made and seconded, all in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, guys.
You're welcome, thanks for coming in.
Good luck, Harry.
Thank you.
Can I leave?
Yes,
Yep, absolutely.
you are free to
No,
No,
go.
you
You have to
can't.
stay a half hour after us.
Approve the sewer easement agreement between the town of East Bridgewater and JSC Holding LLC.
It's an action
Are you
item.
making a motion, or are we just
Well,
discussing?
Like, I guess discuss first. I don't know where
Okay.
we're at with, just, we've discussed this, right?
We've discussed it at length otherwise, in other
Right.
places.
You
So,
guys have been busy.
so this is JSC Holdings. They're the developer for the proposed, even though the application hasn't come in, but for the 240-unit complex, housing development at the north end of North Bedford Street there, at the Whitman line. The town, as part of its sanitary sewer project, needs to run, obviously, lines through the property, but also the owner will have connections from the apartment buildings to our sewer line. So this is, it's a series of values determined both in terms of what the connection fee is worth in terms of number of gallons per day that they'll be allowed to use, but also a series of easements we'll need in order to run the lines to the property. And also, we're purchasing, in essence, a right-of-way to the town's landlocked parcel as part of this.
Okay. Peter?
Yeah, I'll form it in a motion. Just approve the sewer easement agreement between the town of East Bridgewater and JSC Holding LLC.
Second.
All right, any further discussion on that?
Nope.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Well, that was a lot of work. Thank
Mm.
you.
Number 5, let's see, award contract to install generator at Town Hall and Police Station.
And this is one of the projects that was previously approved by the town, I don't think it was just this past May, I think it was earlier than that, and we had the design and specifications done now, and the purchase of the generator itself was a separate issue previously dealt with by the board months ago. This is for a contractor to do the actual installation, which will take a number of months to do also. But the town, through DPW and Brian Keeley, went through the normal procurement process. We got, I think, 2 or 3 bids. This is a low bidder. Their references and such checked out. So I certainly would recommend approval of the contract. And
Okay.
Brian is here and John is here in case the board has any questions or you need to add anything more than what I just said.
Okay. Do you want to make that?
I have, yep, I
form
can
of
make
a
the motion. Do we want the name to be put on here?
Yeah, it needs to be on the record. yeah.
Right, so,
Fall River Electrical Associates in Fall River.
okay. Fall River, say that one more time, please.
Fall River Electrical Associates.
And the cost of the contract is $271,142.
All right. So I'll make a motion to approve the contract to install a generator at Town Hall and Police Station by Fall River Electrical Contractors? Is that right?
Associates.
Associates.
I'm sorry. For the sum of,
$271,142.
as stated.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Just want to say that I know, obviously, we've had people assisting, but Brian has been leading the way on this project, both in terms of the actual purchase of the generator, but also getting everything done to make this contract possible, working with the design firm on the bid specs, and then doing the tours and answering questions from the companies that were bidding and such. So his work's been invaluable in making this happen.
Thank you, Brian.
Okay, moving on. We've got a request, a maternity leave request from a dispatcher.
Chief.
Good evening, all.
Hello.
One of my recent dispatchers that was hired hasn't been here long enough to qualify for FMLA, but due to the Mass Parental Act, she's qualified for 8 weeks. She has requested 12 weeks, so that's why I presented it before the board for the extra 4 weeks, which I'm okay with. She's only been here a few months, so I'm requesting, the 12 weeks she requested be granted.
Okay. Thank you for the explanation. Any questions?
No, that's just a request for the time off. There's no pay involved in that, correct?
Correct, that's without pay. Yep, she hasn't been here that long, so based on the Mass Parental Act, she's up to 8 weeks,
Yep.
but she requested 12.
Yep, no
And the
problem.
board has done this similarly for another
Yep.
employee here in the
Yep.
town hall, for instance, during last year.
Okay. I'm going to make a motion to
Yep,
approve
make
that.
a motion to approve the maternity leave for dispatcher. Do we need to name a name, or we're good, or?
I don't think.
Well, it needs to be, you're going to have to put it on the record, I think, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any?
Amanda Jordan?
Amanda Jordan.
Amanda Jordan.
Okay.
Second.
Any further discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Chief.
Wish her the best.
Yep. Yes. Approve the minutes of the August 7th, 2023 Board of Selectmen's meeting.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Approve but not release the minutes of the August 7th, 2023 Board of Selectmen executive session meeting.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Approve the minutes of the August 14th, 2023 Board of Selectmen's meeting.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye. Approve the minutes of the August 23rd, 2023 Board of Selectmen's meeting.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
To approve and close the special town meeting warrant for October 2nd, 2023, special town meeting.
Second.
Discussion? Charlie?
If you have copies of the warrant, I think we'll need to spend a few minutes on this. So there are a number of purposes that we're having this meeting, but obviously, once you announce a date, a number of other things come up, and people would like to get stuff done in October rather than waiting until winter or this coming May. And we'll walk through the articles. I know, I think many of them are saying requested by the select board, but in many cases, it's really a department head making the request. The first one is for the fire chief, I believe, and this is for or it's actually through the board of selectmen because it's a settlement of the contract negotiations. Back in May, the town meeting had approved a retro payment for fiscal 2023 as part of the fire department contract. We had thought that we would be done by June 30th in terms of negotiations because there was a couple of minor points to get done. We didn't complete those negotiations by June 30th, and therefore the retro pay was not paid out to the firefighters. Instead, talking with the Division of Local Services, the town accountant and I realized that we would have to have that money that was previously appropriated go into free cash on June 30th because it was unused. And then we'd have to ask the town meeting once again for the same amount of money for the retro pay for fiscal 23 as part of the settlement of the contract. We have agreed on a contract that's done. In fact, they got their retro pay for fiscal 24 a couple of weeks ago. But we needed to reappropriate the fiscal 23 money and to do it at this meeting. So that's the layout as to which line items and such the money would go into. Article 2, at this point, I'm not sure that it's going to be necessary, but we're leaving that as available in case there's action that the town needs to take on October 2nd. This is for Chief O'Brien's contract where obviously he's retired, but there were payouts that were necessary as part of the contract. Town council is continuing to work on the details of that. We may have a conclusion by October 2nd and actually submit funding for this reason, or we may need to pass over if we don't in fact have a resolution by then. But what this article allows us to do is have that option.
Mm-hmm.
Article 3 is in the different direction with Chief Jenkins if we need to, in fact, as a resolve his contract negotiations with the board, which is coming up later tonight. If we do need additional funding in the police department line items, that town meeting will be able to provide that additional funding for his contract. Again, my certainly hope would be that we would have a resolution before October 2nd, be able to vote whatever sum was necessary. It's not going to be a large sum, but it will be necessary. This is not so much that he's not worth a large sum of money, but money obviously is.
Did you hear that? Forget it.
Was previously appropriated for the chief's position, no matter who held it. It's just simply making whatever adjustments are necessary between
Good
those.
house, Charlie, good house.
Yes.
Guess we won't be going into executive session.
Don't need to now.
Article 4 is a series of requests from various departments, some of which fit under the capital plan stipulations, some which don't, but we're grouping them as one article simply to move the meeting along. These are requests from the town clerk on two areas, one for improvements upstairs in the attic space where much of our archives. The second is an update of our dog license program. The IT director is also asking for additional help in terms of, because many of the controls and such are up there, and we need to do a better job of temperature regulating because some of our IT equipment is up there. John Haynes has asked for $18,000 for the traffic improvements, some of which were already discussed earlier tonight. And then the school department, as part of the turf project, we what had happened was that, obviously, this summer, there were questions on whether we would be able to use the turf field again for this academic and athletic year. Turns out we're going to be able to, but it was obvious that it was time that we needed to start moving forward to doing the replacement for the field. In terms of timing, it takes time to draw up the bid specs and design work and such, then go out to bid, but you need then to still leave sufficient time for the contractor to put together, get the materials together, to get the labor together and everything like that, and put it on the calendar for the summer of 2024. In order to move that project forward sufficiently ahead so that we would be able to do that work this summer, the school board and the superintendent authorized use of $48,000 from the revolving funds, from the rental of the fields and such, to pay for the initial design and bid specifications. I can't make guarantees other than to say I can bring this to the board and bring this to town meeting to say, yes, I think that the revolving fund should be replenished. I know there's some concern of whether in fact the town should move forward with that project, and I realize that. But it was a decision that needed to move forward at a fairly rapid clip if we're going to be able to meet the schedules for both the design work and for the construction. Obviously, and obviously it'd be up to town meeting to make the final decision about that. Just as I would expect, if things go well, that we would come back to town meeting this winter for the larger appropriation for the construction work, since obviously if we're going to sign a contract with a contractor to do the construction work based on the bids this winter, we're going to have the money on the table to be able to do that. And at least what we'll have is bids in hand to go to town meeting, rather than just an estimate. Article 5 is that we had the Finance Committee near a few days before the beginning of the June 5th session, make various cuts in the requested amounts from various departments, basically to bring the budget into balance. I'm working with Paula and with Melanie to determine what, if any, extra raise and appropriate money has been available for replenishing some of the cuts that were made in the budget at that time. And certainly my feeling, again, it'll be up to the Finance Committee and town meeting to make the decision, is that the replenishment should be on a pro rata basis, in the sense of if we have 50% of the money that was cut, each of those accounts should get 50%. Now, the Finance Committee and town meeting may feel differently. They may feel one line item should have priority over another, but that'll be up to town meeting to make that decision along with the Finance Committee's recommendation. But that's the purpose of Article 5. Article 6 is for the proposed central school building project. The first step in this is to do a feasibility study, looking at various options for a central school. I know that the superintendent will be meeting with you in 2 weeks to talk about the project, but I imagine we've not had a school building committee meeting yet, but I would imagine there's maybe 3 possibilities, which would be do a major renovation of the central school as it is right now. Obviously, things like, you would replace things like the portables that have been there for much longer than anybody was thinking, but also a number of the structural systems and infrastructure of the building would have to be improved to bring it up to standards of today. Another possibility, obviously, would be to take the entire building down. I'm not saying I recommend it, and I know that obviously then you have to find more portables for a certain amount of time to house the students, but that's a second possibility. Third is, if the town felt it had a suitable location, is to build a new elementary school. This does not mean that you tear down Central School, just you're going to be building another building. And that's the type of questions a feasibility study would answer, along with if there was a preferred option among all the other options that are available as to get an approximate cost of whatever option was chosen, so that the town would then have a choice later on as to whether to appropriate the money necessary for doing the next steps of design and engineering, and then also for construction. As I said, Liz is going to be meeting with you in a couple weeks. I would hope that she'll be meeting with the Finance Committee and the Capital Plan Committee as they meet sometime between now and October 2nd. There's a school building committee meeting the 19th, an hour before the school committee meeting on that date. But that's the reason for the article there. There is a reimbursable program as part of this, but the Massachusetts School Building Authority requires cities and towns to put up the full amount of the money in order to be reimbursed. They want to see that you're going to actually be coming up with your share, even if it's partially also reimbursed. So that's the purpose of Article 6. Article 7, I would say we're going to likely pass over. That's the actual construction money. But as I mentioned, I think it's better for the town to have bids in hand and come back to the town rather than with an estimate. So we'll leave it in there for right now. Article 8 is that we did spend money doing testing and such of the AstroTurf field there. Or I don't even know if it's AstroTurf. I think it's turf, a different brand name these days. But in order to determine whether the fields were playable again for another year, I know the DPW spent, it was about $7,850 to do the testing work there. And that was not an expected expense for the DPW, and that line item should be replenished. Article 9 is proposed by the town clerk. She feels that there needs to be overtime costs included for the 2 elections that are coming up during fiscal '24. One is the presidential primary in March, one is the town election in May. She felt that there wasn't sufficient money in the town clerk budget that was approved at the town meeting, at the annual town meeting in May and June, and so she's asking for an additional $6,000 for that. As part of various settlements with the unions, the first one is not a settlement with the union, it's simply that we had a longevity request part of the union contract that was not made before May, so it wasn't included in the assessor's budget. So we need an amount into the assessor's payroll to pay for the longevity request. The $3,300 in Article 11 is in essence part of the settlement of a grievance that was filed a couple of months ago dealing with the education incentive for an employee in the assessor's office, which the board had agreed to. The fire chief has asked for additional funding from the ambulance receipts because he'll have overtime costs in order to send 4 new firefighters to the fire academy, so we'll have to be paying overtime to cover those shifts. The Article 13 is for a prior year bill from the fire department that for some reason was mislaid or somehow unpaid. But this is for personal protective equipment for the department and for the personnel there. And requires a town meeting action in order to pay that bill. Similarly, we had another bill, prior year bill for $11,342. And
Well, the amount changed to 8302.
it's okay, 8302 now,
Yeah.
okay, we'll get that changed. And they only received that bill, even though it was dated, it was ordered back in September 22, but they received it, we're gonna have to change from yesterday, because it's never gonna be just yesterday in the comment.
Oh, gotcha.
So we need to make that change. The opioid stabilization fund. Melanie and I had talked with the Division of Local Services. We had followed the procedure as well as we could for the opioid money, but what we're told was that on June 30th, because the money was not in a stabilization fund or previously appropriated specifically for a particular use, that it was basically, we had set it aside, that we needed to have that money go into free cash. Obviously, it's not meant to be in free cash. It's meant to be in a separate stabilization fund, which the town meeting had also authorized back in May, but it was for receipts that we'll receive starting on July 1st. So money that's come in since July 1st has been going in the stabilization fund for opioid work. The $102,000 was previously received, and we'll need to appropriate the money into the stabilization fund. It does not designate how that money is going to be used. town meeting at a future date will make that decision. But what it does is it does segregate that money, so it won't be used for something else, other than the purposes for which the national settlements were done along with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, which is for prevention and remediation of opioid addiction. Article 16 is a technical change in the bylaw concerning back taxes and licenses and permits. What we're trying to do is have boards and committees and departments contact the collector's office to ensure that someone who's applied for a license or permit is up to date on their taxes. What the bylaw, when written, and this was based on the state statute at the time a couple of decades ago, was that on an annual basis, the collector would issue a list showing, any unpaid taxes, and then the various departments would check that list. And if someone was in arrears by more than a year, they would be on the list. Well, in this case, we've changed our bylaws, and the statute has changed so that it's 30 days rather than a year. So what we've done is set up, if this change is made, basically allows any department or board or committee to contact the collector's office and say, have the taxes been paid on a particular property? Is anybody in arrears by more than 30 days? So all we're doing is periodically, we don't specify the period. It could be every day, it could be every week, it could be every month. But what allows is officially for the collector to issue a list, even if, on one property, as to who's on the unpaid list. And that 17 is something you folks have talked about. I'm not saying if you probably need to make a decision tonight whether or not you want to include it in the warrant. You had looked, this is on the miniature liquor bottles.
Right.
You would look, the board has sent, has told me, and I've done this, is contact our legislators to say that the board is in favor of the various types of legislation that are up in Boston right now that would expand the bottle bill to include miniature bottles as part of the deposit system, but also increase the deposit to 10 cents to make both an incentive for those people who are buying whatever it is, Diet Coke or whatever else, incentive to return the bottles themselves, or if they litter, or however they're disposing of them, to give other people an financial incentive to bring the bottles back. Beyond that, the board had discussed the possibility, as I think it's about now a half dozen towns in Massachusetts have done, is to prohibit the sale of miniature bottles. This is anything under 100 milliliters. So it's certainly allowable by the AG's office. The AG's office has approved those bylaws. I know that obviously there'll be people who are for this or against this in East Bridgewater. We ran through a similar situation in Halifax when we had a citizen's petition to bring it up. But I wanted to include it at least on this draft of the warrant to see if the board was interested in placing on the warrant for October 2nd or not.
Okay.
I think we should keep it on there. If we decide not to, October 2nd, we can pass it over, but I wouldn't take it
Yeah.
off.
I mean, part of me thinks if we're gonna do it, it should be at the annual town meeting and not a special town meeting, just because people tend to pay more attention to an annual town meeting, but,
I thought it had to be voted on. I thought it had to be at an election.
No,
No?
no, the bylaws that have been approved in the various towns have been through town meeting.
Well, I would agree with Carol on the fact that I think that a special doesn't have as much weight as
yeah.
as an annual does,
I mean, I have such mixed feelings about it anyway. I see both sides on that one, and I really am happy that it's a town meeting decision, not a decision that we would be making. So either way, it's in the hands of the residents, but
If you want to wait until the annual, that's fine.
Yeah, I think so. I mean,
I think more people come to that one. Or like you said, see it as more important, so maybe they'll be.
Yeah.
You go ahead, Diane.
I'm just curious. We're talking about liquor now.
Mm-hmm.
That's my field.
This is your area of
That's
expertise.
my area. You're talking about the
I'm not going
nips.
to comment.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
I don't tend to use that word for various reasons.
Okay.
That's why I say miniature.
But that is what-
bottles.
It's
Yeah.
in the business they were nips.
Yes.
Okay. I honestly don't know what this is going to come to. They're just going to buy a half pint. And they may or may not buy as much, but I tend to think that they will. So are you going, I see absolutely no gain in this, and I don't know if the towns that have done it have shown any
Yes.
kind?
The amount of trash from miniature liquor bottles on the side of the road has gone down.
It's about the trash, it's not about,
But-
preventing
but-
people from buying larger amounts of alcohol or,
No,
or,
I
or
know.
trying to control the alcohol they're buying. It's literally about the litter.
But they're going to throw the half pint on the side of the road as
Maybe.
well. They're
Well,
going to,
they,
Then 2
They-
years
they
from
haven't
now, we'll
seen-
change it to half pints.
well, and then you'll go to liters and you'll go to
well,
175.
they've seen less litter in general.
Well,
by
that's
this.
good then, yes.
I would love to see the legislature included in the bottle bill so that
That's
there's
right.
deposits on them, because even if somebody throws it out, then there's an incentive for someone else to pick it up and,
That's
and
exactly.
expand that to 10 cents, and let's include plastic water bottles too while we're at it, but,
That's right.
Well, yeah,
Anyway.
the original bottle
Yeah.
bill's more than 40 years old.
Yeah.
so.
And it made a big difference. I'm old enough to remember the before and after on that one. So, okay.
Okay, so the instruction from the board is to take this off the warrant and
Are you
place
okay
it
with
on
that?
the warrant
Yeah.
for May 13th.
Let's put it off for a bit.
Okay. Does the board have any other questions on any of the other articles, any comments, anything that you feel should it similarly wait until May? I know we have we have some
Claire.
department heads.
No, it seemed like everything else was
Okay.
of a
Okay.
calendar deadline that made sense to do. Okay. Thanks, Charlie.
You're welcome. So.
So do we need to vote?
Yes.
to close
aside-
that, right?
Aside from, whatever editorial changes that Rebecca and I need to make sure that the language is valid, we'll make. But the board approving this tonight would be the basis of whatever we bring down to the town clerk's
Okay.
office. The board's gonna have to sign copies of this later on this week. Probably we're gonna try and have it set up for you, because you'll be coming in on Wednesday.
Right. Okay.
Get the signatures from you then.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve enclose the special town meeting warrant for October 2nd, 2023, special town meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Right.
Aye.
Thank you.
Let's see, moving on. I'll make a motion to appoint Police Chief Michael Jenkins as the Public Records Officer for the Police Department.
Second.
Any discussion?
You sure you want that?
Thank you.
You say that now.
Oh, I know.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Make a motion to approve a request from Zach Kowski to use the town hall parking lot 9/16/2023, rain date of 9/17/2023, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. for the third annual Mums fundraiser to support the East Bridgewater Youth Lacrosse.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Make a motion to approve the event permit for one-day liquor license applications from the Commercial Club of East Bridgewater, located at 1 Nielsen Ave, for the Chili Chowder Fest on September 30th, 2023, from 12 p.m. to 6 p.m.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Make a motion to approve the Hugs to place a donation box at Town Hall from September to mid-October for a Gut Sneakers fundraising drive.
Second.
Discussion? I've never heard of this
I don't
gut
know what it is,
sneakers.
but-
Well, basically, it's.
There's a
kind of-
letter here that
Basically,
explains it.
basically, they'll work with a company that will accept those materials and give them probably like per pair of sneakers or
Used
per
sneakers.
pound or something like that of materials. So it's a fundraising drive for their purposes.
So, get those used sneakers and drop them off.
And turn that into money for the Hugs
Yep.
program.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Discussion possible vote on pursuing community compact grants.
So I had contacted the various departments a few weeks ago. So the Commonwealth has been running this community compact grant for a number of years now. The town has participated in various ways. But however, there was maybe there are various there's various parts of the community compact. One is an IT specialized area, but it's not open for applications yet. There are other areas that will be open later on. Right now, they're looking for grant possibilities or applications for best practices in the various subject areas. What I was looking at were two possibilities, because I had sent this out with a whole list to the department heads. I didn't receive any responses back. So I'm not saying there's no interest, but there wasn't enough interest. And if a department head if we're going to do this, somebody's going to have to lead the charge on it. I'm not, I wanted to make sure that there was some enthusiasm for doing something. 2 areas I was looking at, one was public accessibility best practices. It's probably been a while if we've ever done a self-evaluation and transition plan for ADA. When I was leaving Halifax, we were in the midst of getting that done there. But it doesn't require us to do anything by a certain deadline. That if we find deficiencies in the structures, or buildings and such, or programs and practices, it doesn't say, okay, 2 days later after you find it, you got to do something. What you develop is a plan for eliminating those barriers that you do find, whether they're physical barriers or whether they're barriers in how you're providing programs and services. And it's better to know ahead of time if you do have problems and you know that you've got a plan, in fact, to reduce those barriers, than have someone come down on you and say, well, you should have known this all along, or you've been running this program wrong, or you've prevented this individual from using this building or something like that. And then it tends to be more of a deadline, greater possible penalties, because you haven't been doing what you should have been doing. That's what, and this is part of what you should be doing, is finding out, in fact, if there are barriers, as I said, for structures and buildings, but also for programs and services. The other is what's called an equity audit. Again, it's sort of similar in a sense to the ADA, in that not so much for structures, but if we have programs and services that we're trying to provide to all residents and businesses here in East Bridgewater, that if they're so structured that they end up with inequitable decisions or inequitable solutions that prevent one group of our population from equally accessing a program or service, that we should change those programs and services. It does not mean that you have quotas. It does not mean you have preferences or anything like that. What you're trying to do is make sure that everyone's being treated equally in whatever program or service, so that if you try to provide assistance, you make sure that everybody out there, for instance, knows about it, that you get the information out, as an example. So those are the 2 areas I thought about applying for. The work would not be, for the most part, done in-house. So for instance, the Collins Center, as an example, had approached the town a couple of weeks ago about doing an ADA self-evaluation transition plan. So whether it's for that or whether it's for the equity, my interest would be, yes, I might be a point person for this, but I wouldn't be doing the work itself. I'm not an expert in either of those areas. I'm going to be going to other people, and we would be getting money, we would get proposals from them and bring them to the state to see if we can get funding.
Okay. Thoughts?
Yeah.
Yeah? Yeah?
Yeah, I think it's
Go for it.
beneficial for sure, absolutely.
Okay, good. I'll move along
I
on
don't want to
that.
leave free money on
Right.
Yeah, it's
table.
available to everybody. I mean,
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
So we have
Do you
to
need
make a
us to
motion?
vote to
no.
have you pursue that? Or
Well, other than you
Our
telling me,
verbal
yes, please do this.
and nodding is enough?
Nodding is enough.
All right.
Nod is better, nod is as good as, it's better than a word, but I think a wink is better than a nod, I
Oh,
think it is. Okay.
all right then.
Were you next on retirement assessment?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Discussion of Plymouth.
So
College.
I know the board has from time to time talked with other town officials about the fact that our assessments will be going up significantly from Plymouth County Retirement during the next 5 years. It's going to be at least an 8%, but now it's probably a little higher than that. It will certainly put a crimp in being able to fund other programs during the next 5 years, despite whatever happens with the sanitary sewer project. It's going to be a challenge to continue to fund all our programs at the same level, given those increases from the retirement. I think individually, the board has mentioned that it might be good to talk with other communities, or at least, whether it's just us or whether it's with other communities, to talk to Plymouth County to see what the possibilities of them extending the payment schedule for our retirement assessment. I've been doing this long enough that it was supposedly, back in the day, we were going to get the retirement system fully funded by, let's say, 2020. And during the time I was in Halifax, they kept kicking the can down the road. So that it's now 2030, which is now, in terms of fiscal years, the expectation is Plymouth County be fully funded by fiscal year 2029, so we've got 5 more years to go. However, under state law, they are now allowing the retirement systems to extend their schedules to 2040. Sort of like, however, if you extend your mortgage, you end up paying more because you still have so much principal and you're still paying interest on the principal every year. So yeah, your monthly payments are less, but you're paying for more months. So overall, you're going to end up paying more money. Doesn't mean necessarily, it may be the only way you can afford doing it in the long term, but you are going to pay more money than less. And that drop-off that we've been talking about in 2030, that would then suddenly free up, let's say, several $1 million a year for other purposes, wouldn't happen for a much longer period of time. So there are some downsides to extending the schedule. The board has talked individually to me enough to say, I didn't know if the board wanted me to start contacting other communities about this. I think the other downside is this: both Plymouth County and the various select boards here and in other places have voted recently to make the situation worse.
Right.
Plymouth County voted to increase the base for determining a cost of living increase every year. Usually the cost of living increase has been about 3% every year approved by Plymouth County. And it's been based on, it used to be 14,000, then it was 15, it was 16, they just moved it to 18. That increased everybody's assessments. At the same time, East Bridgewater, but also most of the communities as part of the Plymouth County Retirement, in the last few months approved a cost of living increase instead of 3%, 5%, which meant it was going to increase our assessments by several $100,000 every year for the next 5 years. So it's sort of hard making the case, whether to ourselves or Plymouth County, that we should extend the schedule because it's such an economic financial problem for us, at the same time that both Plymouth County and the various towns voted to make changes that worsened it. That doesn't mean you can't go to them and say, why don't we all work together and extend the schedule, even despite the fact that we've been doing these things. But it we may have a greater impact if we want to go ahead to have more cities and towns join us in that communication with Plymouth County. Because I doubt very much, I'm sure whether it's the board members or anybody else, not this board, Plymouth County Retirement Board, have heard maybe individually from cities and towns that they're running into the same problems we are. But obviously nothing's occurred to change the schedule at all. So, and we can still do nothing and say we're going to live with this situation and 2030 will be rewarded. We can at least, or we can start talking about the cities and towns and find out, are you in similar straits? Are you saying, oh, good grief, how are we going to do this for the next 5 years? And we'd like to see the schedule extended.
What makes anyone think that 2030 is going to be any different than 2020? When we were first gonna,
Well, other than it's only 5 years away now.
Yeah.
And we'll get there someday.
I definitely think we should pursue the other 26 cities and towns, and see what they all have to say if they're in the same situation.
Yeah, I'd like to know what they think. I mean, I am sort of the opinion of just
We
getting over
don't
with.
care what you think because you're already.
I say I want to know what they think. Listen, this is my future too.
Yeah.
I'd be curious what they think, but at the same time, part of me's like, well, we're committed to this, just, get it over with and be done with it. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there's communities I think you're gonna find that are a lot worse off than
Yeah.
East Bridgewater is, for sure, right? So it doesn't hurt to find out what their thoughts are, but in the end of the day, they're gonna want us and everybody else, the worst ones, to join them in the fight to try to extend
Yeah.
it. But, again, to Carol's point, if we've got options over the next, 4 years, 5 years, whatever it may be, then we certainly think we want to take them because it's not gonna get any better.
No.
No.
Let's see what they have to say anyways.
Right.
Just don't commit to anybody.
Well, there's nothing to commit to in the sense of
Right.
if Plymouth County's saying no, that, I mean, it doesn't
Yeah.
change.
Right.
I'm not gonna give them more money.
Right.
Right. And it might be opposite of what we did with the COLA, but I think, there's a difference between taking care of your retirees and recognizing our, fiscal responsibility to funding the program, or not necessarily.
Well, and mind you, Plymouth County itself recommended.
Yes, they did.
Change from 3% to 5%.
They lobbied hard for that.
So,
Very hard.
Okay,
okay, I'll do that.
okay.
Last one I have here is a discussion on bottle bill.
Did that.
You still
Which
want
we've
to talk
done.
about it?
You all set with that?
We already
Okay,
talked.
That's it then. I'm-
Okay, thank you. Announcements, Rebecca? Anything?
I don't have any now.
No? All right, Charlie?
Talking with Ryan, we're going to be doing the multi-factor authentication as that rolls in this fall. But it was more for the training requirements. Obviously, I think most people here have seen articles and such in the newspaper or TV stories during the last year, and this includes Massachusetts municipal government, that we continue to have cybersecurity break-ins. And people, and cities and towns are either having to pay ransomware money, or they are out for days or weeks at a time for various computer systems, and it takes obviously tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars to get back up and running. What I'm planning on doing is reemphasizing to the department heads as we get into the state training program later this year, is that we need everybody who is accessing our town's IT systems, including our email systems, even if they don't have a laptop or anything like that, they're getting their email on their phone or something, that they need to participate in it. It may seemingly be a very minor part of their job, but nevertheless, we want them to be part of the solution, not part of the problem, in ensuring the security of the town's IT systems. Because they themselves could easily be affected one way or the other. We might, not be able to make paychecks, for instance, for some period of time because of IT problems that we end up with. If there are break-ins because people were too casual about email usage or clicking on that link that they shouldn't have clicked on. So I will reiterate that with our department heads and ask to ensure that they set aside time, even though it's relatively little bit over the course of 6 months, so that their employees can, in fact, go through the training programs. On the earmarks, I know it's like I'm doing this a redundancy, but the last time we met, the governor had actually not approved the earmarks on the last time we talked about this. We certainly didn't see any reason why she was not going to, but just to say, yes, finally the whole process completed, and we are getting the earmarks that came out of the conference bill.
Great.
Eventually, later this fall, we'll hear from the various departments of the state agencies that will be dealing with the earmarks, and we'll start getting the paperwork and everything. North Bedford Street Sanitary Sewer Project, really what we just did was a major achievement in working with JSC. I know that Peter and the working group are continuing to work with the other landowners. The design work continues. A major accomplishment was some help from Brockton that we received. We're still looking for funding, and Brockton's support was vital, and I wanted to thank very much Mayor Sullivan and everybody there at City Hall who, it was a last-minute push to get all that done. People on vacation and such, and I really do appreciate the time that they spent in doing that, along with the folks at OCPC who were extremely valuable in making all that happen. And then the contacts that Peter had, that our staff at Weston and Sampson had and such, made a big difference too. So again, it was not a one-person action, one person being able to do everything. Was a team effort in making that happen. I'm hoping it's going to result in some good news later on. ARPA, it's been about a year since we did the applications. I've had various department heads and others ask, so what's happening? I don't know when the next time the ARPA committee is meeting. They've made recommendations on most of the applications that have come in. I don't know whether the board wants to set aside a time, like on the 25th or at some other point, for a public forum, specific public forum, for if people have anything to say about the applications, but also to start making actual decisions on the applications themselves. Because even if the board makes decisions, in many cases, we're gonna be working with Plymouth County with the money that they have rather than the money that we have, to go through the process. And from what we've seen, whether it was with the ambulance, for instance, it takes months to work through the Plymouth County system. So I didn't know what the board's idea for a timetable, both for taking any action on the ARPA applications was.
Anyone?
I think we do have to, for the applications that they have totally either approved or denied, I think it's time for at least for those applications, we have to have a public forum and get a vote. You know, the ones that they haven't done anything with yet, they can come back to us when they get that. Let's get a movement now, because I'm getting the same questions. They've been together for a year, you know, let's
Yep.
take our step, which is next, and the final approval or denial.
Yeah, I think reaching out to that committee, finding out, I mean, maybe they want to gather once together and,
Well, they may meet there during the next couple of weeks between
yeah, and then
tonight and the
have, I'd
next
say
board meeting.
shortly after that, yeah, definitely have them come in, because there are some items on there now that I know we can probably push forward and start to fund,
Okay.
even some of the smaller ones, that makes sense.
Let me stay in contact with them, and also Rebecca and I can work on setting aside time, possibly on the 25th, depending on whether ARPA's gonna meet during the next couple of weeks.
Yep.
Sounds good.
And then, last thing on my notes, the Maya Grant Award, we're obviously members of the Massachusetts Interlocal Insurance Association. They have an annual grant program for risk management. Basically, the idea is money's available to help the town make improvements in its programs and services that might reduce the chances of a loss. So in fact, we got $2,000 for work safety equipment for the water department, and then also $5,400 for univent inspection at the middle school. These are part of the heating system, and we had similar problems over in Halifax. I remember. So, you know, if they're not working properly, and the temperatures fluctuate enough, you can have leaks, which, especially if they're not caught, are going to be can create a significant problem in the rooms and the structure. So having those tested and inspected helps reduce the chances of a problem like that occurring. So, you know, I've notified, obviously, DPW with John, Jason, and Brian of that. So, you know, it's nice to have another $7,000 or so of, for equipment and inspections that we didn't have to come out of the town's coffers.
Great. Okay. Board discussions. Peter?
I just, the only question I had was, are we anywhere further along, or anything you can give us on the cottage over here? I mean, it's been.
I know, I just
been a
drove by
while.
it again. No, I mean, I think in terms of a realistic timetable, what I could do is, I believe I have at least one invitation for bid, not for that particular building, but from another community that was in a similar situation, that I can retrofit for us. Go out to bid, get some bids to bring to the town meeting in May. And then the town meeting can make the decision, in fact, about whether, I mean, obviously, at some point, we gotta have it removed, but at least I can tell them it's gonna be this much money to do it.
Right.
I think we were talking about that when John Clifford was executive director.
Yeah, it's been brought up to me on more than one occasion,
Okay.
especially even this weekend, we were playing softball back there. Like, what the hell are you doing with that
Right.
building?
Yeah.
I'm like,
We're keeping it as an annex.
We could make it a she shed.
potentially, so, yeah, that's all I had, just.
Okay.
Okay.
David,
Bicentennial.
what's happening with Bicentennial?
We had a softball tournament Saturday in the heat. Mr. Spagone was gracious to umpire some of the games. It was a great tournament. We had 4 teams there. Every team was, you know, had enough players there, and at least the people that I've talked to since then, including a lot of the people at the 9/11 this morning, said, let's make this an annual thing. And I'm saying, let's put this on to recreation. Let them get on something there, and what we'll do is have a tournament. It can be a full-day tournament, and depending on how many teams we get. The only thing we'd probably do is some kind of a entry fee just to pay for real umpires, so.
That's the only thing he's gonna change.
What the hell?
other-
I thought so.
Well, you were getting
Wow.
I wasn't playing. Chuck would tell you, they don't want me playing because it got real ugly out there real fast. But umpiring, I was fine. I was fine, right?
Yeah, you left in the middle of the game.
I did leave, yes.
So,
Golf was more
you know,
important.
just so it would, keep us out of it, stuff like that. But it was a great day.
I think that
Everyone had
sounds like
lot
a
of
great
fun.
idea.
Police chief made a couple of tremendous defensive plays out there. One-line drive, his hand still has to be swelled up for that one. But it was fun. Everyone said it was a great thing, and let's keep it up. And maybe we'll add other things that same day.
Yeah,
I see one of the officers today said, why don't we have it running during the Christmas on the Common Parade, at the same time in December.
With the
He thought
snow,
that'd be a
yeah,
real good
that's-
idea.
So,
So, yeah, it was a great time, and, recreation, let's go for it. Tomorrow night at the Senior Community Center, we have some people from Bridgewater State coming in to remember East Bridgewater, African American and Native American history, start at 7 o'clock. So let's get some people down there and listen to that portion of the history that a lot of us probably don't know that much about. The trolley tour, the second aspect of the trolley tour is going to be on October 14th, sometime next week. They'll put out the information on people requesting tickets. On September 29th and 30th, the scout troops in town and some of the surrounding towns will be having a weekend at the Senior Community Center. Starting Friday night, they'll have an overnight, and they'll have all kinds of things going on Saturday.
Is that just for the scouts only, or is that open to the public?
Saturday's open to the public. I
Can't
believe that's
believe-
gonna start at 10 o'clock. They'll be running things until noontime or so. And that night, September 30th, we have participants from the Brockton Symphony Orchestra over at the high school at 7 o'clock, so I can't wait to see how many people from the Chili Chowder Fest show up at 7 o'clock after spending a day
don't
out
want 'em
there.
there at that
That's a
hour.
great idea, yeah.
But anyhow, they're invited if they can make it over there, I guess.
You're gonna have to bus them.
That's, yeah, that is it for now.
That's it, all right. Okay, we're going into executive session.
Yep. All right, pursuant to MGL Chapter 30A, Section 21A2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel, police chief, deputy police chief. Pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation in an open meeting may have detrimental effect on the bargaining or positions of the public body, and the chair so declares. Firefighters, superior officers, clerical, DPW, dispatchers, superior officers, patrol officers, library. Aye.
And the chair is declaring that it would have a detrimental effect.
The chair has declared.
That being said, I, Peter Spagone, Junior Clerk.
David Sheedy, Vice Chair.
I, Carol Julius, chair.
I don't think we'll be returning to open session.
We're not coming back, are we?
We may come back very briefly, I'm sorry, Zach. But
We
we'll
may
at
come
least-
back,
We'll at
Zach.
least move into the office and come
Yeah.
back rather than move you.
All right. Good night, everybody. Okay, and we're back with a continuation of our September 11th, 2023 Select Board meeting. We are fresh out of executive session. Mr. Clerk, would you like to make a motion?
I would. I'll make a motion to approve the compensation for Police Chief Michael Jenkins as agreed upon with Town Council and Mr. Jenkins.
And all the other
other
associated provisions of the contract.
There you go.
What he said.
Exactly.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Chief. We appreciate everything you've done and what you'll continue to do.
Thank you very much. I just want to thank the board and the town and John Clifford and everyone else for working closely with me on this, and I look forward to working with y'all going forward.
As do we.
Thank you.
All right.
Yep. That's great.
All right, brother. Yep.
Thanks, Chief. All right.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.